Look who pulled up for a catch-up. It's really here from 947 Afternoons. And if you're here, it means you've got taste. Go ahead, enjoy the moment you missed. But don't ghost me. Weekdays, 12 to 3 p.m. on 947. I'm loud and way more fun in real time. And yeah, there's more audio magic waiting for you right here on Prime Media Plus.
Move to the music.
All the way home. 947 Drive with Thando.
It's always such a weird thing for me to talk about, like, people I know very well, friends, on the radio when it comes to things that are not great. Mm-hmm. But we all, I believe, can use whatever means we have to help one another. So I'm using company resources to help a friend of mine, Denise Zimba. It's a story that's been circulating for, I would say, the last just over a year.
About a year, yeah.
She's now opened up about spending Mother's Day away from her daughters, who of course live in Germany with their father. And this is following an ongoing custody battle. And I saw on social media that has struck, a nerve with lots of parents who know this pain too well. And I don't know, and I'm hoping, and no pressure, I'm hoping we can get her to speak to us about it, to see how we can help.
Yeah, it's probably a parent's worst nightmare. When you get married or have a kid with somebody, there's many things that you're worried about, but I think nothing's worse than losing custody of your kids, and even more so when the custody is lost to somebody who lives in a foreign country.
Also, how does it get there? At some point we were so in love, we decided we're going to get married.
You never think of it.
And then it gets to a point of like a level of hatred that I can't comprehend, where you are going to deprive, and I guess they always say there's two sides to a story, but essentially these kids don't have their mom.
And it almost seems punitive because you're now also punishing kids when that's a situation where the mom is not allowed, or there's no way for the mom to see them because you live halfway around the world.
And I mean, and we'll speak to legal experts a little bit later on, but what are the grounds for someone to be able to do that? To be able to just take the children?
And especially with Denise's situation, it's so interesting because there's two different legal places involved here. Of course, the husband's in Germany, so you're dealing with the German legal system and ours. But I think the case was handled in Germany. That's what.
I understand it, and I again stand to be corrected that it was handled in South Africa.
Oh, I thought this case was initiated in Germany.
No, so
okay.
If I understand correctly, again, we'd really love to have her on the line to clarify. But from what I recall, they had moved to Germany.
Yes.
And then, obviously, they fell out. And then Denise came back home with the children.
On holiday, quote unquote.
But then he came back to say, their home or primary residence is in Germany.
Because their schooling is there, that's where they've grown up. And so she wanted to stay here after they broke up.
Yeah.
And then the courts ruled no.
They must go back.
Okay, and I think you're right. It was handled here where the court said, hey, no. Their primary residence is in Joburg. They've got to go back, in Germany. They've got to go back to Germany with their dad because that's where they've grown up. That's where their whole lives are.
Well, parents who have gone through something like this, I can't imagine for the life of me where you're fighting, and we hear the stories all the time. Yeah. And like you said, it's a completely different ball game when somebody's on the other side of the world. How have you navigated it? And who is the courts? Which side is the courts? Whose side is the courts in?
Yeah. At what point do they decide? Especially where both parents are able to provide, for example, and both parents are of a good mental health and are just present parents. You hear the stories of like, the mom or the dad is an alcoholic, so that's why the court ruled in the favor of that one. But if both parents are on equal footing, how do you go about deciding?
I was under the assumption they'll always favor the mother.
I think in most cases that's the case, but I think in Denise's case, and I stand to be corrected, is that the father was the primary caregiver in the sense that he was financially caring for everyone, and I guess maybe he was also physically
because that was the agreement initially, but now things have changed.
That's court. You can't have your own agreements at home and then come to court.
If you've been through a similar situation, let's share notes, see how we can help. This is it's a very upsetting story for me personally. Divorce should be a divorce. It's two adults who once loved each other or whatever, and then you fall apart, or whatever the situation may be. At what point is it okay for the kids to struggle or to be almost, it feels like a bargaining chip.
Yeah, I'm with you. Never use your kids as a bargaining tool, but of course there are situations where parents should be denied access or full access to their children. You know, be it one parent is an alcoholic, a drug addict, or an abuser. I get that situation. Obviously, that's not Denise's case.
No.
I'm not saying that at all. But there, of course, are situations where parents should not have full access to their kids.
Yeah, that we can understand. But
Yeah.
when you're a fit parent, what is the reason?
I guess my question to you, and I know this is so personal and sensitive to you, what was the right thing to do in that situation?
For
I
who?
think the courts ruled out of objectivity to go, hey, the kids only know Germany.
Okay, but what is the kids are kids. I'm sorry, it's like saying I only know Protea Glen.
I think-
we moved out of there when I was a child.
Fine, but I think that comes up in court proceedings and they go, okay, cool, what's the plan for the kids when they're here? Where is she going to send them to school? Where is she going to house them?
There's
Whatever it may be.
plenty
And I
of
think when
schools
she
in
comes
South
and she
Africa.
goes, okay, we're going to put them in my apartment or whatever it is, the court goes, it is a better life for the kids to be.
According to who?
The courts, according to the courts.
On the basis, and sorry, maybe I'm not. What's the word? Impartial.
You definitely
in this,
aren't, yeah.
in this argument.
Yeah.
But I'm so sorry if I'm going to live in a mansion in Germany versus living in an apartment in Johannesburg. That can't be the measure.
A lot of it is. It's like, what are you able to provide for the kids? When you're fighting legally, a lot of it is that.
Can I provide a roof over their head? Can I make sure they are fed?
What is that
Can
roof
I make
like?
sure
It's really important. Guys, court is a wild thing, and I hope most people never have to go through that, and most people don't have to go fight these court battles because that is what comes up.
Margot, you went through a divorce.
Yes, hi Thando. How are you guys doing?
Hi, Margot. We're all right. Thank you. Talk to us.
I'm actually the one that gave you my book, and it's in my book. So what happened was that we went through a divorce. The kids in the divorce settlement, the kids were given to me because they ask you who would like to take the kids. So I obviously want my kids. So a year later, after moving, selling the house, moving out, got my own place. He got his own place. He took the boys for one weekend. When he came back, he convinced the boys to live with him. They were still very small. So I didn't want to fight back and forth, and I didn't know, my rights because I didn't have money to go to a lawyer and anything like that. And he actually took me up for maintenance after me doing everything for my kids and not being a bad mother or neglecting my kids. And then when I found out, when we eventually went to the court for maintenance, I found out that he did the wrong thing. They asked him, how did he manage to take the kids from me without the court giving the kids to him? So someone in the maintenance system said, it's fine, he can take me after maintenance. But later on when I found out, it wasn't handled the correct way. So, in some sense, when you get divorced, you must make, the courts will decide who the kids go to.
But Margot, how did you just then let them go without fighting, or was it a financial thing that you were like, I don't?
No.
Yeah.
No, I was stable. You was not very stable. Okay, you were stable at that moment. I was very stable. I had a very beautiful home. I made sure my kids were, good and everything, were close to the schools. So he was very bitter. He was very bitter, and he wanted to spite me. He wanted to break me, Thando. So and he was a police officer before. So I thought because we co-parenting, it was the right thing to do, and I didn't want my kids to go through the fight of pulling them from pillar to post and breaking them down and things like that.
Sure.
So I allowed him to do that because he's the father of the kids. But later on, when he took me up for maintenance, I was shocked. How does a man take me up for maintenance for my own kids? And then later on, when we went back 6 months later, after all this dragging me through court, someone picked up that it wasn't handled the right way.
Sure.
So I was my kids.
Yeah, Margot, thank you so much for sharing your story. Leandre, you're from Mozambique?
Yes, I'm Mozambique and I lived in South Africa for about 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I did follow this story, and I think maybe what I wanted to clarify, I also went through something like that maybe. Most important, it's not about who's right and wrong. There is a law convention I'm driving, I can't remember, that most of the countries subscribe.
Okay, we're going to try to get Leandre back on a better. We're speaking when divorce doesn't just end a marriage, it costs kids, which it should never, right? Leandre, you went through something similar.
Yes. So I am Mozambican, and my ex-husband was also Mozambican. He took my children to Mozambique on a holiday, and when he was there, he said the kids will live there. So I had to go to court and get custody of my children, and then we moved back to South Africa. But what I wanted to highlight that a lot of people don't know, most of
Leandre.
yes. According to the treaty, you cannot just take your children to another country and decide that the children will live there. So where you live, so I think with Denise, she should have gone to court in Germany and get authorization to travel and live with the kids in South Africa. So the South Africa didn't decide who has custody. I think South Africa decided that they have to go back to Germany, and the courts in Germany will decide who has custody of the children.
But now it's on her to find the money in order to go through this legal process in euros.
Yeah. So it becomes costly. So it's very important for people that have children with foreigners or live abroad that are aware of that. And a lot of people make that mistake of taking the children, say, I'm going on a holiday, thinking they'll stay there. What happens is most of the countries subscribe to this treaty, and the courts will always decide that the children need to go back to where they live. And then if there's a dispute, the court will decide who has custody of the children.
But based on how long they've lived there, is it a case of how long have they lived in South Africa versus how long they've lived in Mozambique?
Yes. So basically it was like this. When we went to Mozambique, the court, we went to a lot of court hearings to decide where do the children live. So the children live here, the children study here, my daughter was born here. So the court decided, no, they have to go back to South Africa, and the dispute will be decided in South Africa.
And if the child was born in Mozambique, then?
So my older son was born in Mozambique, but he lived here most of his life. He came here when he was 3 months. But this happens, if you go do a research, it happens with a lot of people. The issue is that there's a treaty that a lot of countries subscribe, including South Africa and Mozambique, that says the custody of the children and where the children live needs to be decided where the children live. So in Denise's case, the children live in Germany. So my case, my children live in South Africa. So they can't decide. So I've learned through that experience, and I've seen a lot of cases, a lot of people making the same mistake. You can't just take the children. You have to go to court, get authorization to travel if they're going to live abroad. That's how it works. So maybe that's why I called, because I think it's very important that people know about that. It's not about the court. South Africa didn't decide who has a custody. They decided that the children need to go back to Germany, and in Germany, a court will decide who has custody of the children.
Very similar story that Leandra has to Denise, obviously. And of course, there's different aspects to this. There's a moral aspect, there's an emotional aspect, the human aspect of it all. And I think the court, like she said, there's a treaty that's signed, and that's viewed as kidnapping. You know?
Yeah, but I mean, at what point, right? And I'm so sorry. When we fell in love and we started dating, these legalities weren't spoken about. Right? You have the means now to go and get your lawyers that cost lots of money. Sure, maybe I don't have as much as you have, meaning you'll put up a better fight than I'm able to.
Well,
can we not at some point find a middle ground?
I mean, that would be the most preferable way, that you sort it out amicably. But I guess there's many different situations. Why you're breaking up? Why are you trying to escape? Was your partner abusive physically, mentally, financially? Are you trying to escape with this kid? And I guess courts would take that in perspective. If you were in an abusive situation.
Yeah, we'll leave it there.
Move to the music.
All the way home. 947 Drive with Thando.